Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in on a Wednesday, the Maize and Blue Review. Jim Scarcelli, the former Wolverine, has joined us pretty much all summer on Wednesdays, and here he is on August the 9th as we inch closer to the start of the season. Scar, you're always excited to talk a little bit about Michigan football. Are you finding yourself even with more of a jump in your step as we get closer to the season?
Yeah, listening to the coaches, they're going. I like when the Big Ten Network goes to the colleges and they look at practice. And I was listening to Coach DiNardo and Howard talking to, Matt Rule and James Franklin yesterday. A lot of good stuff there, and they show a little bit of practice. And we're coming close, Denny. We're knocking on the door, man. It's going to be game week real soon.
Yeah, September the 2nd. It is right around the corner. Well, today we are going to ask Scar about the depth chart out of spring and how it's materializing as it's into fall camp, putting all his experience together over the years and the things that he's learned. We'll talk to him about that. JJ McCarthy, it was Jim Harbaugh over the summer saying, hey, Michigan probably going to throw the ball a lot more because he talked about being 50-50, and then McCarthy was talking about throwing the ball more this week. I'll ask Scar about if he thinks how much more, or if Michigan actually is going to be putting it up in the air more. We'll see what he has to say there. Also, the freshmen, how many first-year guys can get out there and help this team. And we've got a number of other things. But Scar, will start, Michigan, you got to go back to 91 since to see Michigan ranked this highly in the preseason. And so, here we are. The media poll comes out on Monday, but right now the coaches have Michigan at number 2. What's that mean to you?
Hey, I think it means something. It means that people are seeing talent. We've beaten the Buckeyes 2 years in a row. We won the Big Ten championship 2 years in a row, and they're seeing players, they're seeing talent, they're seeing a scheme. They're seeing just an overall program that's recruited, and they feel we have the kind of players, to compete with Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, year in, year out. And I think we do. I think we have that kind of talent, that kind of depth. What does it mean for our players and our coaches? Bo used to talk about upsets, and he said upsets are basically the weakness of the favorite. They happen when the favorite mind isn't right. Well, this is the same kind of thing. How do you handle being ranked number 2, or how do you handle being ranked number 22, or not being ranked at all? And that's about the leader, and how the leader and the assistant coaches and the senior leadership handle preparation. And how do you handle it year in, week to week? And we just have the kind of coaches and program that we're going to be ready regardless of where we're ranked. So I talked about that last week and that, but that our team is going to be fired up, ready to go no matter where we're ranked. But I think it's a heck of a thing that people are seeing talent. They're seeing the kind of players we're bringing in and the depth we're developing. And it's a great thing, man. And all this stuff helps recruiting.
I think it is a great thing. You see the trajectory over the last 2 years, and then you look at the other teams, and if Michigan, like when you start looking at that, the FPI had Michigan a lot further down in terms of winning the championship, and Michigan fans like it's BS and everything. Well, when it comes down to this this poll, if the coaches had Ohio State in front of Michigan, if you were a fan or you're somebody else saying, that's kind of stupid, considering looking at the quarterback position and specifically, and then where the game is going to be played, and then how Michigan has really handled OSU the last 2 years. It would be silly to put OSU in front of Michigan. It doesn't mean that they can't beat U of M, but so that was going to be one thing. And the coaches got it right. It's just something as a guide to kick off the season. And a lot of it does include how you feel about the program, where they sit right now. Certainly you're looking at the roster last year and how many players are coming back, and you look at the schedule and you put all these different things in there. And, coaches mostly, they have advisors. They're not sitting around looking at every team. They shouldn't. They should be thinking about their schedule and their personnel and what they have to do. Not, hey, who am I going to rank number 21? But, so they'll have their SIDs helping them out and other coaches and maybe even some of the media that they talk with. But they got it right, and the fans, they should, they're excited, and this is right where they should be. So all systems are ready to go. Everything's good to go.
Yeah, Denny, look, it's a great thing. People think we're good. We got players and we proved it, but it doesn't mean a darn thing when we go to Nebraska. It means nothing. It means nothing when we go to Minnesota, we go to Michigan. We got to play. We got to fight. We got to scratch. We got to go through camp. Denny, you didn't have it on your list, but I'm going to just go real quickly through camp goals. Camp goals. We got to come out of there healthy. Number one, you got to come out healthy. Okay. But the fine line between, and then the second thing I have is getting your team prepared and ready to play for game one. So healthy and getting them ready to play. Sometimes there's a conflict there because, how much hitting do you do? How much scrimmaging do you do? Those are the questions coaches they have to ask themselves, as they prepare for that first game. So, Jim has to make those decisions and the coaches have to decide, do you want to hit? How much hitting do you want to do? So you want to come out healthy. You want to get better. You want to be game ready. So that's that hitting. You want to be game ready. You're always going to have pleasant surprises, Denny. As a coach, there's always some pleasant surprises. There's guys that wow, okay, this kid really improved in 3 months. He's doing something he didn't do in the spring. So where are the pleasant surprises? It might be some freshmen. We'll talk about freshmen a little later, but where's the pleasant surprises of the guys that you were planning on coming back? And then you want to just be a unified program. Don't do any dumb stuff until that first game, man. Because I've seen it before. Guys doing dumb stuff, and we want to come out confident. And Danny, if I'm coaching Michigan, I want to have 25 guys on defense, basically 2 deep, that I feel totally confident with, and about 25 guys on offense that I feel totally confident with, that we can play with. So if we lose a couple guys here and there, 50 guys, that's kind of would be my 5 goals coming out of camp.
Those all sound good. For me, watching Harbaugh coach over the years, and would I have talked this way 3 years ago? Probably not. I would have said, I'm worried about the quarterback. I'm worried about Ohio State because they hadn't beaten them. But now that they have at least gotten over that hump, that's a big thing. For the mindset of the players in the program. They know they have to do it again, and if they want to achieve their goals. But when it comes down to getting the team ready and the fine line of if you're a boxer, you got to spar to get ready for the prize fight. You got to get calloused. If you're a back, you got to. I feel really confident about Harbaugh and how he will put these guys through the paces and where they'll be come September the 2nd. This isn't his first rodeo of ramping a team up and getting them ready to go. This is his specialty. I mean, this is something. I think that if you're a Michigan fan, you feel pretty good about the head man and what he's going to be able to do to get these guys ready to go.
Yeah, you just got to be smart. You got to get a feel for your team. There's times I was coaching and we were in our scrimmage, the week before our first game, and we were just looking so good, so fast, so sharp, so tough. I just shortened the whole scrimmage with what we had to finish with. I said, we are looking too good, and I don't want to do. We're ready. I don't need any more hitting. I don't want to take any more chances. So shut it down, man. Let's go. We're ready to go. Let's get ready for game week.
Yeah, I did see J.J. McCarthy this week. He was talking about throwing the football a little bit more. He's asked, if he's going to put it up in the air more. And, he's like, yeah, they're going to do that. And he mentioned that things were effortless right now. I mean, all good things that you like to hear. You say, hey, that's preseason stuff. That's the way, you things that you expect to hear. But, you don't want to hear, we're, all trying to get on the same page or, so this having a second year, there's a lot of at least discussion with fans and media about, Michigan's not going to throw the ball anymore, throw the ball more. How do you feel about that? If somebody comes up and you say, hey, is Michigan really going to be putting it up more than they were the last 2 years where they've had this success? Or are they going to stay with their, what brought them here?
Look, we've got these 3 games, and obviously we want to win these games, but you want to work on your run game. You want to be great in it. You want to be, Denny, you want to be great in all this stuff. You want to be great throwing the ball to every receiver. Find out which receivers can catch the ball. Some of these new guys are going to get reps. Roman Wilson, we know him, and Cornelius can play, but how about these other guys? There's going to be a bunch of other guys that are going to get opportunities. Can they catch the ball? Can we count on them to run the right routes? So, okay. I want to be great in all that stuff. I want when people look at Michigan, they go, oh, they fear our pass game. They fear JJ running. They fear every type of all the formations, all the 4 tight ends, the 6 offensive linemen. They fear the adjustments, the shifting, the jet sweep, the bubble. They fear all that stuff. That's what you want them to fear. Okay. Now, but Denny, if I'm the play caller, someone's going to call plays these first couple games. You're going to get in that game. And, your coach says, we're hearing this, we want to throw the ball more. Well, let me tell you, if you get in a tight football game, you ain't going to give a darn about, the throwing the ball. If running the ball is what we need to do to win, I'm going to run the damn ball down their throat and keep running it and be safe and not turn the ball over. But you just never know what can happen in those early games. We've been there. We've seen Appalachian State. I don't want to jinx us, but we've seen that kind of stuff. And you got to, so listen, we'll prepare all phases of the game. And of course, we want to be able to have a heck of a lot of confidence with our pass game. So when when Rutgers comes in and we go to Nebraska, we go to Minnesota, we got a hell of a confident pass protection, backs that can block, receivers that can catch. And we've got all that. And we've got 2 quarterbacks that can throw.
Yeah, you said it there at the lead. They want to do everything great. I mean, this is a team that has national championship aspirations. They're not hiding those. And, you think about, even though they might not need that passing game till November and late November, you want to break it out and be able to show that you can do that before to have that confidence. They pretty much won the Ohio State game because they were able to throw the ball. You can say it opened it up for those 2 big runs by Donovan Edwards late. And there's an awful lot of people saying they're not going to be able to compete with the SEC, whoever they see in the college football playoff, if they're not going to be able to be dangerous in the passing game. You know that. The fans know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. So, I know that they know that. But I could also sit around making a case for, and you've said, you got to be known for something. And if Michigan is known for something right now, it's a physicality up front. They want to say it on both sides of the ball, but it really is. They've got 2 of the premier players in the country, and they both play running back. So, and the offensive line, how many times you hear people say, well, 2 times in a row for the first time ever in college football, the Joe Moore, the Sharon Moore Award. And, they've got this line. It could be as good or even better than what they've had the last 2 years. So, they are going to put their hard hats on and run the ball. But if you're pressing me, are they going to throw the ball more? Yeah, they want to throw the ball more, and they want to, they want to be able to execute. They did throw the ball a little bit deep last year. They just had trouble connecting on those. So if they connect on a few of those, but I don't think it's going to be 50-50 or they're going to strive for being 50-50. Harbaugh had said something a number of times last year, and you might not like it as a fan because fans, you want pinball machine. You like throwing the ball. You like scoring at will. You like bombs. You like excite. Throwing the football is exciting. But Harbaugh said it a number of times. What he wants is points scored. He wants touchdowns. And does it really matter to you as a fan if Michigan goes on a 10-play, 8-minute drive that with 5 plays down at the 1 that take a bang, 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 and before they run it in? Or, or you just want that 2-play, 70-yarder, to go in there. They both result in a touchdown. It might be a little bit like when you're playing basketball, Scar, and if you're just talking about a 2-pointer, do you want a layup or do you want a slam dunk? It goes through the hoop. Of course, a slam is a little bit more exciting.
I don't think Jim gives a dang how they go about scoring points, man. I don't think anybody in there. But yes, we want to develop this pass game and be, like I said, be totally confident with it. Find out who these other receivers are. Get them confident. So when we got to go when the game to get tougher and develop all that stuff. But there's teams I played that I feared their run game, and I always said if we get them throwing the ball, we're doing good. That's what we want. We want to get these guys to throw it. So I would bet there's some coaches, and I bet you those first 3 games, those guys are going to be, they're going to be a sigh of relief if they get Michigan to where they have to throw a little bit on third down. That's going to be an accomplishment for those first 3 games. They're not going to want Michigan 3rd and 1 or 2nd and 1. They'd rather see them throw, and they're going to do everything they can to stop those run games early on.
Well, the way Harbaugh's been doing things over the last 2 years, Michigan, depending on where they're on the field, if Michigan's 3rd and 8, they'll run the ball. Yeah. They'll run the ball thinking that they'll get it to 4th and 2, and then they're going to go for it anyways. If they get
which is good strategy at times, Danny, because you don't want to be predictable on 3rd and 8. It's okay to run a draw, screen, bubble, all those low risk things at times.
Here is JP asking if you're ready to get back into the game. Would you ever contemplate taking a position? You have the personality. Are you ready to unretire, take your poker cards, your chips, cash them in, and go back to the gridiron?
Danny, I'm happy here talking to you. I've coached 25 years, man. You know the hours these guys put in? Unbelievable. I'm not ready for the hours again, man. I loved it. You got to make the time commitment. The Michigan coaching staff, they're on somewhat of a 6 to 10 program as we move forward, starting now. You got it? 6 to 10 at night.
6 to 10. Oh, 6 in the morning and 10 at night. Huh?
That's pretty much the pro, and that's most of college football coach. It's not just Michigan guys. I don't know. Don't quote me on those hours, but that's kind of what I've heard. That it's insane. So you want to coach college football, that's it, man. You better be that's your life. And I did it a long time, but I'm happy here coming on with Big D once a week. So hacking it up back and forth. That's good enough for me. Put a little film on, taking a peek.
6 to 10, like a lot of people are like, sign me up. I'm ready to go, live football and everything else. But you have to do that all the way through. Yeah. Not many people are able to jump right into, a major college football program, unless you're a former player. Sometimes you can, but you gotta work your way and go through all of that to get in that position, which, takes a lot of work. You know who else puts in a lot of hours? Josh Henschke and Trevor McHugh and all of the employees and hard workers at the Maize and Blue Review there all day long trying to bring you the best information. And you can see it pop up at 6 in the morning, at 10 at night, at 12 when it comes to practice reports. And I know people are really want some meat on that bone. They haven't put the full pads on or had a practice yet because people are like, who's the 3rd running back? It's like, who knows? You had to get to wait. And at least a couple more days, but you want to know things about practice. It's always a good time to join up with the Maize and Blue Review. If you're really looking for things about practice, I would say getting in now might be the best time all year long to get in. So join up the Maize and Blue Review. As I've heard Henschke say, give us a chance, and we think you'll like what you see. You'll like what you hear right now because we've talked a little bit about Michigan being number 2 and the depth chart a little bit. What's it take? Last year it was a shocker to see Mason Graham. Harbaugh comes out a week or two before the start of the season and says, Graham's our starter, a true freshman at defensive tackle. Scar, that was a shocker to me. What about the freshman impact this year? You foresee anybody surprising you or
Jenny? I don't think we're going to see a Will Johnson type situation. There's too many good looking corners. Maybe it's safety. I don't think we're going to see it. I don't think on defense. I don't see a Mason. There's 5 good looking interior D linemen that came out of spring, and it's going to be tough to crack one of those guys out of there. And it sometimes for a freshman to play, I think in most cases it's because there was some screw up in recruiting. Somebody got hurt, somebody transferred, something happened. In my opinion, that's what you see most of the time when you see freshmen playing. It's because there was a mistake somewhere with recruiting. but I don't see that happening on defense at all. And we got 5 edge players, 4 solid ones. Linebacker, no way. There's too much to learn in there at linebacker. D-line, maybe D-line, you might see a kid get some rep, a little bit of reps, but there's 5 players in there. And secondary is a lot to learn. I don't see it happening on defense. Maybe at receiver, maybe. It ain't happening with the offensive line. No way.
No.
We got too many good-looking running backs. They're not going to give the ball to a freshman, not with the kind of depth we got coming back there. And I just don't see it. I don't see it happening, Danny, much at all. And it's not a terrible thing. It's a good sign of where you want your program, that we're not counting on freshmen, man.
Yeah, I mean, Will Johnson really, it took him half the season really to get in there. I mean, you want to argue something about that? Charles Woodson didn't start in 1995, so he didn't start his first game. He wasn't actually the first freshman out there. It was David Bowens, was out there making the impact. Not one of the greatest football players of all time. And Charles Woodson, it took him a little bit. No, but the Ohio State game, he had 2 picks as a freshman and warned everybody that Terry Glenn, talked a little bit too much. But it can happen. I hear you on that. Coming up tomorrow, Scar, this is almost sort of in your neck of the woods. How about Reno's Hot Dog Stand and Catering? Tomorrow, the 10th, they'll be in Northville at the Northville Winery and Brewery. Tell the guys when you go up there, get that Detroiter, say, Ithian says, get the Detroiter, and tell them good afternoon, Michigan football sent you. And those guys will be excited to see you out there in Northville. Scar, as you've watched some of those practices, you mentioned Matt Rule. What about Nebraska and some of the things that they're doing? You liked their plan and how, what at least you saw some of the things that Rule was doing with the team?
Yeah. Danny, I listen to Rule and Fickle and James Franklin, and I totally understand Matt Rule's plan. It makes sense. Okay, now you got to hear me out, because he doesn't have the kind of players Michigan has, and most of the people he's going to face. He doesn't have the talent. Okay, so what can you do to give your team a chance if you don't have the players to line up down in every down against some people? So he's going to huddle. First of all, he's going to huddle. That shortens the game. So you're going to limit the amount of repetitions. Scott Frost wanted to run a play every 12 seconds. Matt Rule is going to huddle. So there's going to be less snaps. So if you make a mistake against Nebraska, you turn the ball over or something, it's harder to catch up now because there's less snaps. So that's the first thing he's doing. I did this as a coach when I only had 20-some kids and we were playing teams with 50, 60 kids. We were in and out of the huddle as slow as we possibly could. We took a stopwatch, Denny, and we didn't snap the ball until there was 2 seconds left on the play clock. You understand? To slow the game down. So he's doing that. That's a smart coach. Okay, and he's gonna try to run some old school stuff, some power stuff, and he obviously wants to work on the run game. So the more you're able to run the ball with any kind of consistency, but he's doing something on defense, which it's not so much going to help him from a time standpoint, but it's unique. He's going to be the only guy in the Big Ten running. He's running a 3-3-5. Okay, no one in the Big Ten is running the 3-3-5. That's some of the stuff Rich Rod used to run, but it's unique. It's one of those things, Denny, as a coach, you prepare for Michigan. You look at, Rutgers. We're similar to what they're doing on defense. A lot of us are similar. And then you got to play Nebraska, and the offensive coordinator is like, oh, hell, well, these guys are running a 3-3. It's just a pain. It's different. And I think they're going to be pretty good on defense because it's something different, and it gives people problems schematically because you don't see it all the time. Your offense doesn't see it. So those are just things that I liked hearing Matt Rule that I think helps him make up for lack of talent.
Good points by you. I remember laughing a little bit last year after the Ohio State game because TCU featured a 3-3-5, and I was going back and saying, yeah, Rich Rod, he'll be the old 3-3-5, and TCU's defense did I don't know, did a halfway decent job. Certainly against the run. Michigan, obviously, they made a few plays defensively, 2 pick sixes there to help them out. So yeah, there's no reason to laugh at a coach that's trying some different things and zigging while everybody else is doing the zag. So yeah, smart move.
Yeah, Denny, too. At the time, Rich Rod was running 3-3-5. You still had to. I think it's weak against the Wisconsins, the old Wisconsins, the old Michigan States, the 4 tight ends. We should do well with our physical stuff, our big guy packages against the 3-3-5. I would hope, but anyway, there's more spread people in the Big Ten now than there were, 15 years ago when Rich Rod was running it. So the 3-3-5 is ideal against the spread. So he feels he's going to see a lot of it, and it's it's something different.
It is, and everyone that has gone to Lincoln, that was a night game 2 years ago. Talked, and you could tell by watching just on TV that stadium was electric. And speaking of stadiums, Scar, now that you got Oregon coming in along with Washington, and we know you got the LA schools in there. Those stadiums, you got the Rose Bowl, which everybody is familiar with and would love to go take a trip out there, or going to the Coliseum if you're downtown LA. But the stadium in Seattle, out there on that peninsula, where you look out and you see the Olympia Mountains out on one side. You turn over on this side, you see Mount Rainier. I mean, it's just quite the setup. I don't know if there's a better setup in the world for a stadium than where Washington plays. And then Oregon, not too shabby either with their stadium and how they've got the one awning over there, and they keep the sound in there. And I don't know if they still have that crown on the field or not. For that runoff. I know in high school you always had to. Probably ran into a lot of crowns or scar, back in the day, but then everybody went to the field turf in high school then, didn't they? No more crowns.
Yeah. I've been to all 4 stadiums. Now, I played at Washington back in the, the early 80s. Now, I don't know is that the same stadium, Denny? I think it's different, right?
I don't know. I drove past on the way to a basketball game in 2005, so it's been a while. It was the same thing with Oregon, going to a basketball.
Okay, well, let me just say this. I've been to all 4 stadiums. I was on the team in the Rose Bowl. I didn't play in the Rose Bowl, but I was on the team, on the sideline, dressed in uniform, but I was a guy that wasn't playing. Anyway, the Rose Bowl, you remember, you heard it here first, when we go to the Rose Bowl, when we play UCLA there, we will have more Michigan fans there than they will have fans. You heard it. You remember that.
I'm ready.
They don't draw many fans there on regular season games. Okay, so when we go, it'll be a lot of Michigan people there. UCLA does not do a great job with home field advantage, in my opinion. I've seen USC play in a regular season game. They do a very average job too. Regular season games at the Coliseum. We will be right there with them, with Michigan fans, when we play there. So home field advantage, when we go to UCLA and USC, it's not Big Ten caliber like we're used to going to Nebraska and Michigan State and Penn State. No, it ain't nothing like that. But Oregon and in Washington will be a whole nother deal. Okay, going to Oregon will be a freaking nutcase. Okay, that'll be like going to Penn State, going to a hostile Michigan State where it's loud and they will disrupt your offense. Oregon fans are smart and they are loud and they will be sold out, and it'll be harder to get a ticket there for Michigan people. When we go to Washington, they will be the same kind of deal. That place was I remember playing, and it's the same kind of fans. Those fans care, and they're going to sell out, and it'll be loud, and we won't have a ton of Michigan people there. It'll be tougher to get a ticket. I think I told you the first time we played at Washington was like 1980. The first time I played there, 83, I think. That was the first time we saw the Wave. You remember the Wave? Everybody thought that started with the Detroit Tigers in 19. No, man, we saw that in 1983 at Washington, and their fans were loud and tough. So Oregon and Washington will be loud, tough, hostile place. Not so much for the other two.
You got me pumped up, thinking about, it's it was so weird when it happened. It wasn't, I don't know. I wasn't expecting USC and UCLA, but it happened. It was an easier. I was accepting it easier, and then it was just weird. Even though you see all of this going on, to see Oregon and Washington in, I had a hard time. But listening to you, I'm able to think about those stadiums and going out there, and I can sit around talking about the Rose Bowl for an hour straight, and how much of a fun trip that is. So yeah, it's like you're gonna have a couple bowl trips during the season, if you're a Michigan fan. Exciting.
Yeah, yes, but there, like I said, there's definitely a difference in the kind of fight we're going to face with the fans.
Yeah, well, when Michigan, the last time that I went there, I remember the block kick in Washington, Michigan losing there, and then losing to Oregon. That's when, Carr afterwards talked about, Navarre had not. I think that's the last time they played there. They hadn't played on a crown field, and it's different when you're throwing from the hash.
That's
and
right.
The receivers down there. And Carr just mentioned it, and people immediately like, Carr made an excuse about the crowd.
Denny, I had never heard Lloyd talk about that. And it is a big difference with throwing your out cuts and throwing to the sideline. And yeah, that would be a factor. But, Michigan should be smart enough to have a way we could practice and prepare our team for that. We should have, they should, create something in the practice field that mounds it up, whatever. So, you know what I'm saying? You gotta, hey, like Bo used to say, man, he always used to quote Patton, if you're gonna fight in the North Atlantic, you got to train in the North Atlantic. So we should have had a mechanism to prepare our quarterbacks for that.
Yeah, they could have gone over to a high school back in the day, and there were a lot of those. Livonia Franklin had a crown on their field back in the day. So,
the punters is talking about. I never realized there was a golf course there. When I went there as a player, you drive in, you drive out, you don't see nothing. But then when I went as a fan years later, yeah, it's a beautiful golf course.
Oh, yeah, well, and I think they have a much better lighting around the stadium. Back in the 2004 Rose Bowl that I went to, man, you could just come walking out there like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's still a little chilly, but then that sun starts coming out, and what a place to walk around, man. The whole thing, the stadium, there's really nothing.
Yeah, I tell you, you talk about a home field advantage. I don't know how much of a home field advantage is if I'm playing for UCLA and I got an hour bus ride to get to the Rose Bowl from the campus. You follow me, Danny? So that's a miserable thing that those players have to deal with, is driving an hour from the campus. Depending on what time, what kind of run. California, Los Angeles traffic is nuts. So anyway.
Little different on New Year's Day. That's right, Scar.
Yeah. Anyway, it is what it is, and we'll be ready to roll against all of them.
I do remember like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning being on that expressway, and everybody, the LA traffic. You got 5 lanes. There's like, where's everybody at? Well, it's a little bit different. 6 in the morning on New Year's Day. A little bit different. All right, Scar. Tell me. I remember back when you went to practice in the spring. You were talking about the running game, but you weren't talking about Blake Corum. You weren't talking about Donovan Edwards. You were talking about a big back that you thought was going to be utilized more this year in big number 20 impressed you. I remember of seeing that. I wonder, how he's acquitting himself.
I'm going to say this about the if you listen to our video talk after the spring game practice, we broke down the practice of the spring game. We looked at it, we dissected it, we analyzed it. Honestly, I don't think there's going to be much change in the depth, the top 4 players at the edge or the line. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of change. And there's guys battling like heck right now, to move up and down. But you're not going to see a lot of changes, I don't think, in some of those positions. But anyway, Mullings is a kid. When I watched him at practice, I was impressed with his physicality, his toughness. I just see him as a kid that that I would play him on first down. I would rotate him in with, because Jim liked to rotate 3 of those backs. You don't want to just rotate the 2, especially in these first 3 games. Mullings is a kid, and especially that we talked about the freshman. I talked about him before we saw him in the spring game. I can't think of his name, but you know which guy I'm talking about, the freshman running back. But Mullings is a kid I'm high on. I see him getting a lot of clock. He's got to secure that darn football. And, so I don't see a whole lot of changes in our top players in the depth chart from what we saw in the spring. But Mullings is a kid I think is going to get a lot of reps. And, Danny, let me just say this. There was talk about, I saw one guy say, Michigan's season is going to depend on J.J. McCarthy. Okay? J.J. McCarthy has to have a great – I totally disagree with that. Totally disagree with that. J.J. McCarthy just needs to do what he's done, be the same kind of guy he's been, the same kind of leader. He had a great year last year. He made a mistake against Penn State. He made a couple mistakes against TCU, but for the most part, the kid is exactly what I want as my quarterback. He shouldn't feel any more pressure than just being a great teammate and doing the things that he's done. He's got a great offensive line, great running backs. We got great defense surrounding him, kickers. And, anyway, I just totally disagreed with that statement when I'm hearing it from some people in the media that, somehow J.J. McCarthy has to be Superman. And if I'm coaching that kid, that's the last thing I'm telling that kid.
Yeah, I don't. Did you think he was Superman last year? Because he was pretty good last year. You're always like, and any football team, it's like the easiest thing to say. Like, you need your quarterback to be the best player out there. For Michigan, does he really have to be the best player? I think when they get into, if we're talking about, against Ohio State, from the middle of the second quarter on, I think he was their best player. And when you get into the college football playoff, I think, he is going to have to be. There's a lot of good things that he did against TCU, but, there were some negative things in there as well. I don't know, like McCarthy, he didn't have a very good first half against Maryland as he was adjusting to the speed. Then, he was brilliant in the first drive against Iowa. It was going to be a big test. How's he going to do in that hornet's nest down the road and everything? And he did have a fumble in the first half, but then after that, the pick against IU on the road wasn't all that bad. It was down in the red zone. You mentioned that one against Penn State that he had, but that was it. Penn State and Indiana. He had a game when he had like 10 seconds to throw, and then of course the 2 against TCU. But I saw a guy getting better as the season went along, and looked like he did a great job from that Maryland game to the Ohio State game in when to run, when to get out of bounds, when to slide. He didn't take any really big shots.
That's the thing JJ has to do a great job of this year. I have that in my notes here, Danny. JJ has to do a great job knowing when to slide, knowing when to get out of bounds, and really doing everything he can to protect his body. He's just so important to that football team. So
yeah, I thought he did a good job at that. You saw him learning as he went and had that feel for it. I mean, how many times against Ohio State did he go sliding down or running out of bounds? I mean, he was brilliant in that game. Against Illinois, he went running down the field blocking for Blake Corum and got his bell rung. Not the kind of move. I'm sure on the tape, everybody was excited, but then they're like, we don't want you to do that. So, he seemed like a pretty good. It seems like smart.
Danny, too. If I'm the head coach of this team, where I'm putting a little bit of pressure. I want our offensive coaches, our offensive play callers, to continue to have great scheme and put defenses in conflict. Obviously, I said we got to be good at our basic fundamental stuff. We want to run our basic stuff and do a good job with it, but we still have to have, the Statue of Liberty, and some of those plays and some of those conflict tweak plays that give defenses problems, and the shifting and the stuff we drove Penn State nuts with. In fact, speaking of Manny Diaz, I heard him talk. He was interviewed, and he's a high risk guy, and he talked about that, wanting to be. And I think he basically talked about preparing for Michigan too. That's something they've done in the whole offseason, is prepare for the for the top teams in the Big Ten, Michigan, Ohio State. So, and he's a high risk guy. So anyway, I want to see that our coaches continue to have, creativity to give defenses problems and not just, let them line up and try to stop our best stuff.
If these are things that in the past used to really rile me up, and I thought for good reason. It was Michigan's, bowl record. They beat Florida in 2015 and in Harbaugh's first bowl game, and bowl games they mean so much, to fans. You're playing that last game. It's not necessarily a springboard into next season, but it certainly springboards how you feel about the program if you're able to get a W, because it's the last thing you remember. But then you go to that Florida State game when Delvin Cook had that big run, and people say, well, you take that out. Well, you can't take that one out. The next year is the one that really got me. It was against South Carolina, where they completely melted down on defense. They were trying some goofy things in that game. I hated it. I hated how they played in the fourth quarter. But then they followed it up the next year against Florida and got humiliated in that game. That was a terrible game. So, yeah, I hear people talking about the bowl games, but these last 2 years where they were technically bowl games, they were in the college football playoff. So to me, I don't want to take I won't take a entry into the college football playoff again and lose in the semifinal, because this team has bigger fish to fry. But focusing in on Michigan's bowl record, I think 3 years ago, I was right there in the front seat with everybody else. But these last 2 years talking about it and acting like, the bowl games, Michigan's got a problem. No, that's not it. Although, how they played against TCU specifically, not just that it was a bowl game, just how they performed in that game, and in a number of different situations there, does stick in my craw. So maybe I do. Now that I've talked through it, I do understand why people are, fired up about those last games of the year.
Yeah, TCU is it was one of probably our worst coaching defensively all year. We just couldn't get a beat on stopping them. That guy knew what we were doing, and we had players make mistakes that they hadn't made all year, and it was just an ugly game. And losing to Georgia was no shame 2 years ago. That was just they just had better players at a lot of positions than us.
Yeah, that's the only one. Not that I am handing out free passes, but I will hand one out for that Georgia game, considering the talent there.
Danny, just real quick, bowl games matter. They matter in recruiting. They matter in momentum. But at the same time, I've been on bowl teams where we lost in the bowl game, and then we're pissed off all spring and pissed off all summer, and there's a lot of motivation in that too. And I've seen the upside of that. So there's two edges to that losing your bowl game. Well,
what was the reason, Scar? Were you guys out, at Lowry's Steakhouse, eating too much?
Oh, no.
What was the problem?
You know what, Danny? That is the best prime rib you're ever going to eat in your life. You ever go to Los Angeles, you go get your prime rib over at Lowry. You won't have a better prime rib, man.
Let me just go through some of these questions for you. Sorry, Scar, I cut you.
But that's that. And you lose games for different reasons. Our quarterback got hurt out in the Rose Bowl. Okay, the attitude is going great with the players from Michigan, yet offense and defense and special teams, kicking and punting go blue. The attitude is going great with players from Michigan, yet offense and defense and special teams players kicking and punting. I guess it feels we're doing pretty good there. There was a count about one back, 10 offensive line formation. You could actually put offensive linemen as long as they had 80 numbers on them, or eligible numbers. You got to have a certain amount of eligible numbers. But Jim's done that. He's put backs in the offensive linemen in the backfield, and as long as you have eligible numbers, you could have a formation with who are in the roster, and they're offensive linemen by trade, but you could give them a different number. So yeah, Jim's done. I've seen 7 offensive linemen for him. I think at Stanford, maybe with the 49ers, he's done that.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, you could say I'm predictable and maybe even a jerk when it comes down to trick plays because I'm a one-trick pony when it comes down to trick plays. If they work, I like them. If they don't, I tend to, be overly critical of them. Like, why are you going to a gadget play? Like the one that they ran, and I think in the Big Ten championship game where they had all the tight ends and everything, it worked. It was like, oh, magical. But then they were in the Philly special against TCU. Hated it. I actually really didn't like the jump pass that Mullings had against Ohio State, that trick play, but it worked. So,
it's good. What's good about some of those plays is defenses have to worry about it, and they got to think about it. They have to know that they got it in the playbook. I like the trick plays like I showed last week where, like we run our reverse off the power. I like the tricks that look exactly like some of our best stuff.
All right, Scar, you're an expert in a lot of things. I'm more, this is more in my wheelhouse. I know you mentioned Lowry's out in California, Richard saying the one in Chicago, which I didn't go to, but I did go to Ditka's steakhouse a couple of years ago and had you get the, blackened top, coffee blackened top there at Ditka's. It wasn't too bad. Then we looked over upstairs at Ditka's, and there he was, Mike Ditka.
Iron Mike. One of our callers talked about having Corum and Edwards in the game at the same time.
Yeah. What do you think?
Okay. Well, there's a strength to that, but there's some weaknesses to that too, because, who's going to block? That's why if Jim likes to play that tight end / fullback in the backfield, those guys are blockers. You know what I mean? What Corum and Edwards gives you is, okay, Edwards is the pass threat. And, you could do some things. You could shift out of it. But the weakness of it is which of those guys are you going to use as a blocker? And you really can't use Edwards. I don't think, Corum is a kid that could maybe lead up through on a linebacker. But I think it's a weakness from which of those guys can block. It helps you if you want to motion out into some type of pass formation.
All right, couple more here. Michael saying TCU is sticking in our craw because we were better than that team. Georgia proved that to be true. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, he's absolutely right, man. TCU is a game that, we'd probably win 7 out of 10. And our Minner had his worst day, man.
Scott says 2 things Scar has done that Dennis has not. Is next to Bo Derek in a photo and 8 at Lowry's. Go Scar. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to go to Lowry's, man. Go forget the diet. Forget the diet when you go in there because it's going to be a big fat old steak, man.
There's nothing wrong with a big fat old steak, is there?
No, hell no. But yeah, Corum can block. There's no question, Corum. You'd have to. What could you do with both of them in the backfield? There's some things, but a lot of it doesn't mesh with what we have in the playbook now.
All right, let's go with one more, and it's from Mark. Let's see. I'll read this. It says, given Michigan's talent, it ought to be able to have 3 plays out of each formation, and when the D guesses right, it's just man on man, and Michigan should still do well. I don't know.
Yeah, listen, what you want to do is you want to get better players where if you got your basic plays and they know what they are, and you can still move people and block people and execute because you got better players and they're coached better. Yes, that's a great situation when you got better players, and that makes it real easy as a coach. But what happens when you play Penn State and Ohio State and Georgia? These guys have really good players that can line up with your guys. Now you got to give your players a little bit of an edge from a scheme standpoint, from a conflict, from a curveball, put their defense in a bind. So, yeah, you want to do some things. And we did that. I said, we talked about it, how we got Manny Diaz confused with some of our formations and our shifting and our 6 offensive linemen. And then that's the job of the offensive coordinator, to help the offensive players with scheme and conflict.
Let's get a final word, Scar. I'll let you have the hammer. I'll give you my first. I'll give you the final word first, and then Scar can come over the top. My focus with Michigan football being in training camp here on August the 9th is I take a step back and I really look at the talent that this team has. And in years past, when you started pulling out the 5 stars and you looked at the SEC, you said, you know what, Michigan's ceiling. Maybe it's beating Ohio State one of these years, but national championship, not when they're running up against an Alabama or whoever, Georgia now. And the way Michigan was able to bring back with name, image, and likeness the players that they have, and the way they hit the transfer portal for 10 players, Michigan has as much talent as any team in the country. And when I think about J.J. McCarthy, Donovan Edwards, and Blake Corum, and Loveland, and that offensive line, this is a juggernaut what they have on offense. And defensively, after I saw that there wasn't any letdown, and when they lost Hutchinson and Ajabo and Dax Hill, and the edge position and everything, when I look at from all the defensive line to the linebackers to the defensive back, this team is stacked. I'm excited. I'm sitting back, and I know it's down to a player or two, and I see everybody moving in, and I peek down at my cards, and I see a pair of aces. I feel pretty good, about pushing all my chips in there. I think Michigan's got 2 aces down there. Teams are going all in on them, and let's see what happens. I feel pretty good about the season. I'm excited for it, Scar. What about you?
I'm right with you. I'm very excited. We've got great depth, and you talk about where we are as a program, and these players, that player, but I think Jim just does such a great job with constantly developing depth, constantly developing all these young guys. You looked at those games, the early games last year. We played like 100 guys, did like 80, 90, 100 guys play in those games. There's a lot of coaches that don't believe in that and don't play as many kids, but all that stuff develops depth. Every rep that these young guys get in these first 3 games will be something that they'll benefit from next year or the year after. So I think, we do a good job of developing depth. They did a great job identifying transfer talent and then having the ability to recruit them and get them, just like you said. So everything, Denny, everything is in place, man. Everything is there, and let's just execute, have great game plans, and man, let's just hope the injury bug hits somebody else, because it's going to happen. You're going to have some injuries. Let's hope they're minor, and we're able to deal with them.
Let's go. Ready to kick this off. All right, Scar. There'll be a couple more weeks, before we're actually talking about the games. But great job. Excited to talk with you next week.
All right, Denny, go blue. We'll have a little more film next week. Maybe look at some ECU. I think, look, their quarterback they had was real good. The kid graduated, but they're a good offensive coach, offensive team. I saw him. Okay, all right.
No, I'm just messing with you.
I'm telling you, we got to be ready for a well-coached offensive football team.
I'm just messing with you, Scar. They better be ready for East Carolina. You're right.
All right, baby. Go blue.
I'm not looking past East Carolina.
Nobody.
Still.